talk is called Designing Sports, a Framework for Exertion Games.
Hello, my name is Floyd Mueller. Can you pass the ball around, please? So this combines about 9 years worth of research and a whole bunch of other smart people. It's called exertion games. What are exertion games? They are games that require physical effort and are mediated by technology. Probably the first commercially successful example was Dance Dance Revolution. But we now have a plethora of other systems coming out, like the Wii, the Sony Move, the Kinect, and we also see jogging apps like the Nike Plus that track your movements, and then you can share it online with your friends in order to engage in a virtual race as one form of an exertion game. To provide an overview of what I'm talking about. So first, we try to invent the future of exertion games, and we created 3 exertion games that we analyzed and studied the user experience in order to come up with a framework that inspired other designers to create novel games, such as this one. Alright, so the first game I'm going to talk about today is jogging over distance. It's a jogging support system that allowed 2 joggers, one in London, UK, the other in Melbourne, Australia. Something will happen, but not that. We will talk about risk in a second. So this is jogging over a distance. 2 joggers, one in London, the other one in Melbourne, Australia, and they used to jog together. They're siblings, and they talk while they jog, but they can't do it anymore because they live in 2 different continents. So we gave them a headset and a microphone so they can still talk to one another while they jog at the same time, just in 2 different locations. But the other thing we did is we actually equipped them with a heart rate monitor. And based on their heart rate, we spatialized the audio of the other person talking through the stereo headset in like a 3D surround sound environment. So it sounds like a surround sound cinema, where if the other person puts more effort in, then the sound actually appears very soft. So you have to speed up to get your heart rate up, because then the sound gets closer and closer to your head and louder when it's next to you. But if you put too much effort in, the sound is at the back. Right? All of a sudden, these 2 could engage in a race-type behavior again. Next thing we did was table tennis for 3. We actually started off with table tennis for 2, but then we thought maybe we can scale it for 3 players. It's a table tennis-like exertion experience in which you have a real physical bat and a ball, but you're trying to snatch away these virtual targets. These here. There's 8 of them. You're trying to snatch them away from your opponent. Show you what it looks like. Hi, and welcome to Table Tennis for 3. Table tennis for 3 allows players to play table tennis together, although they can be anywhere in the world. And what's more, 3 players can play at the same time. Nobody has to wait until it's their turn. The players use a regular ball and bat on a table tennis table that is one side flipped up. The video conference of the other 2 players is projected on the flipped up side, which has been painted white. And then we also did remote impact, shadow boxing over distance. We tried to facilitate extreme physical exertion. So here you can see how participants try to hit the virtual shadow of their remote partners really, really hard. Alright, there's a few common characteristics of these games. First, they're all games, right? In which players voluntarily struggle towards an artificial goal. And that struggling here is mainly about struggling against the limitations of their own bodies. And if you look at that, you can now understand why we also see jogging as a form of a game. The physical effort affects the game's outcome, which is important for physical health, such as obesity. And even though the examples I show you now are all digitally mediated social experiences, we took particular effort to make our framework applicable also for single-player gaming experiences. So we want you to design exertion games, but we found there's a lack of conceptual and particular design guidance on how to do that. But through our games, we developed a craft knowledge of how to do these type of games. We would like to turn them into more systematic understanding in order to help designers like you to design better, more engaging exertion games. So we engage in analysis of these games, as well as study the user experience in order to arrive at the exertion framework. So the exertion framework consists of two things. One are the body perspectives, and two are design concepts. Let's talk about the body perspectives first. We take the stance that the body is central in any exertion experience. Right? Makes kind of sense. We propose there are four perspectives to view the body, which is a nice compromise between detailed enough, but not too complex, in order to structure our analysis. Let's try this out. Can you all please put your laptop aside and stand up for me and follow what I'm doing?
Whoa.
All right, put your feet pretty much shoulder length. I said I'm talk about wrist. Shoulder length apart. Put your hands out like this. And now lower yourself as if you're sitting down, but don't sit down. Right? So you just hover above your chair. And it perfect is if you've got a 90-degree angle everywhere between your legs. Right? And you can probably now feel it kind of here, right? It's good, isn't it? So you keep doing that while I carefully climb down here. Over here. So let's say you want to turn this type of, you can sit down. Let's say you want to turn this type of activity into an exertion game, right? And we propose that four body perspectives can help you think about that. Let's say this was just you. And let's say you experience that your body responded to the exertion activity. Maybe your heart rate went up. And you think, maybe I can do a game where I equip people with a heart rate monitor, and the person, whoever gets their heart rate up the most doing this, gets to win the game. And we call this the responding body, because your body responds to the exertion activity. What you could also do is use a Kinect and measure the movement from standing up to squatting down. We call that the moving body. You can also put a sensor in the chair and reward the player who triggers the sensor last, right? And we call that the sensing body. So this is about how the body interacts with the environment. And lastly, you can probably see that your performance is probably different now with all your friends and colleagues around than if I would have made you do the same activity on your own. And we call that the relating body, because your body relates to other bodies. One note though. So this is the body perspectives are not only about increasing and optimizing energy expenditure. Because we're trying to avoid this. What we want is this. We want an engaging exertion experience. Because we believe fun is very important when it comes to exertion. And in order to facilitate that, we need the design concepts. And they came from the user studies, the user experience. And together with the body perspectives, they provide design vocabulary for exertion games. So if you look at the body body perspectives again, and we now frame them as columns. We can now apply the design concepts horizontally. And we identified 6 in our paper, but for now I'm just going to talk about 3 of them. So first is awareness of exertion. And now you can see that from the 4 different perspectives. And we had awareness, particularly coming out in the jogging over distance examples, where participants were talking to one another while realizing that they're getting tired. So what happened there was, they said because the system made them focus so much on the audio, right? They were hearing the breathing of the other person much more. And through the breathing, they could sense how exhausted the other person got. And especially if the other person was getting too exhausted, they developed a sense of empathy with the other person. So very much goes about the relating work. But at the same time, they also reported that they were less aware of their own responding body. The system helped them to be distracted from the discomfort of exercise because they were able to check with a friend. So this is awareness of exertion. Expression of exertion. So here quite clearly, participants expressed themselves to communicate to their partners, and they were doing that using their bodies, right? Because our bodies are very expressive medium. And they did that even though they weren't rewarded for any type of points, and it was using energy. And the last one is risk, as you've seen there. Risk particularly came out in the remote impact, because there we actually tried to take risk out with these virtual shadows, but participants actually put the risk back in for them, because they found very creative ways of fitting the interactive surface, and there was also always the risk of over-exertion. That's the result.
This bit's always the exercise. Where's bit's the exercise?
Alright, so this is our framework. Risk, yes. So as I said, they facilitated risk by interacting with the surface, and also the risk of over-exhaustion. So now we put the exertion framework into action, because we believe it supports the ideation and the analysis process. I'm going to show that to you by means of the game Hanging Off a Bar, which came out of one of the workshops that we held using the exertion framework. And it very much plays with the body perspective of the moving body. Right there. In particular because there's not much moving body at all in that game. Hi. Have you ever seen one of those movies where the action hero hangs off a cliff, seemingly forever at least? Well, it's actually quite hard to hang on to things in far. And therefore we developed this game around the idea of hanging off a bar in order to drown on the wide river below you. Luckily, from time to time, there's a set of rope or a raft coming by, on which you can jump in order to recover. But not for too long, because the raft is going to disappear behind you into the waterfall. You have to hang onto the bar again. The longer you hang onto this, the larger the time between the individual logs. And if you hang on really long, you will also see that the raft rides slower, and they also get shorter, so you've got less time to recover. Unlike other games that focus on movement by flailing the arms, with this game we aim to inspire other researchers and Unlike other games that focus on movement by flailing in the arms, with our game the aim to inspire other researchers and designers to think about exertion not only in terms of movement, but also in terms of other instances. There might be not much movement at all, such as hanging off a bar. So this is hanging off a bar. And if you now use the framework, you can actually see what happened there. So first of all, you can look at the game from the perspective of the sensing body, which is, the bar, but also the platform where players were standing on when the sensor was actually there. You saw how participants were moving their body in order to express themselves, but also to make them aware from the discomfort of hanging off a bar, to distract them from that. But that also led to a type of performance for the audience standing around. And even though we didn't really put too much risk into that, right? So there was the virtual raging river, you can now see how we could extend that. For example, we could put like electric current into the base plate at the bottom if you let go for a jewelry. Or you can just simply raise the bar a bit higher in order to increase the risk, right? So to sum up, we've shown you how to design sports using a framework for exertion games. It has 4 perspectives on the body, augmented with a set of design concepts. Since then, we actually developed design cards out of that we use in workshops with over 300 designers who came up with over 40 exertion games that you can check out at exertioninterfaces.com, as well as download these design cards. And my name is Floyd. That concludes my talk. Thank you very much.
We have time for questions.
Any questions?
What happened to the ball?
You want me to do it again?
There's a lot. It seems one important element of games and sports games in particular is the reward system. And it seems to be implicit in this framework. I'm wondering if you have more insights about how the reward system is part of this framework.
Very good question, which you will read in an upcoming top 5 publication, hopefully. It's the short answer. I think it's very, very important, and it's very different to a reward system in a regular mouse and keyboard gamepad experience. Because there's multiple levels. One is the joy of movement people get, right? So if I tell you to press a button for half an hour, you might go, why would I do that? If I tell you to go jogging for half an hour, you might think it's the best idea ever, right? You might do it for health, or you might do it for entertainment, but a lot of people do it for both. So how to design for that is a very important issue, yes. If you do more research on that, let me know as well.
Thanks, this is a lovely presentation and really good fun. And obviously that makes me exceedingly grumpy, so I have to ask you about So it's about your framework, which is the whole point of exercise is also learning a skill. So as an athlete, you learn skills about how to manipulate your body, how to manipulate your activity with others. And when I look at that framework, it just seems like it's about exertion, just the stretching. But that's really boring. What makes sport fun is the skill that you learn, your own performance over time.
For some of our participants would have totally disagreed with that statement. But yes, we actually talked about at lunch with Darren about skill and learning a lot. And that definitely came out in some of the workshops. Some participants or designers rather want to create a learning experience and use exertion for that. In that framework, we basically very much focus on the exertion experience, and some learning comes out of that. And I should actually say, read the paper, because there's a whole design concept of kinesthetic knowledge, or kinesthetic understanding, which covers exactly that, the difference of learning to move and moving to learn. So that's a good plug to actually read the paper, because this is one of the concepts. Thank you.
Like table tennis, it's already an exertion game, isn't it?
Sorry, which one?
Table tennis.
Table tennis, yes.
So I was thinking you've done something extra, you've added something, some kind of digital interaction does your framework show the hacks that you have added to table tennis?
Good question. So we don't use the framework to do that. We use our introductions on the workshops to motivate why you would use computers to facilitate something that you could do otherwise. I mean, if you want to play football, you should go out and play football outside. I think you should only use technology if you provide an additional benefit for the user, such as doing it in a distributed way, such as doing it with 3 people. Right? You can't really play table tennis with 3 people in a fair way. It's always 2 against 1, which is unfair for either. So you create these new type of experiences. The same with the jogging. We level the heart rate out. So we actually don't not look at the absolute heart rate. We look at the relative heart rate. So this way, a marathon runner can now all of a sudden run with a beginner, which they couldn't do if they would be in the same park together. Right? So the distance all of a sudden an opportunity to do something now that they couldn't do before. So we encourage our designers to think about that while you introduce technology. And then use the framework to actually